General Petraeus, thank you so much for your time and being with us. Let's start with the latest on Iran and U.S. tension. Six B-2 bomber deployed to Diego Garcia with 2 aircraft carrier in the region and 140 military flight to U.S. bases in the region. The largest buildup in the Middle East by United States in last year. And as a former CENTCOM commander, can you please tell us what does it mean actually? Does it mean that preparation for real war against Iran or just a deterrence, signal for deterrence?
I think it's probably a bit of both. The Trump administration is imposing the maximum pressure strategy right now. I think the preference in the White House, President Trump has always prided himself on ending wars, not on starting them. But he's showing that he has what it takes in position if war is actually required. He would like to negotiate, I think. He's very conscious that when the decision is made to go to war and you carry out the initial actions, that they don't always go the way you would like them to go, that there's always a what if you will. And President Obama, when I was in the Situation Room, would always ask what if and what if and what if, and that really is the right question to ask. We obviously have been increasing the pressure on the Houthis, but the Houthis, of course, trace back their support to Iran. There's great concern about how close Iran is to the possibility of having a nuclear weapon. They're literally just one turn of the enrichment process from having weapons-grade uranium. That is something that President Trump has said he will never allow the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon. Israel certainly will not allow that either. So these are both the steps taken to prepare for what might have to be done in terms of a military operation. But also steps to show that we are very serious and that you should not do this, and therefore trying to deter Iran from doing what would be unacceptable and would force the United States to take action. And so I think you have to see it in both respects in that regard. It's a lot of combat power with 2 entire aircraft carrier task forces. There's also actually an amphibious warfare group on a flat deck as well in the region. You mentioned the additional B-2 bombers flying to Diego Garcia, the very substantial number of flights in recent weeks. And all of that, again, is both putting pressure on the Houthis, sending them a very clear message that you cannot continue to disrupt traffic through the Red Sea and therefore the Suez Canal. By the way, we have coalition partners helping us do that. The British and French have typically been there together with us, but also showing that if you take an action in the nuclear arena that is unacceptable to us, we will have to take very substantial action in response.
In terms of your first option, as you mentioned, sending a message to Houthis, how does the U.S. avoid crossing the line to broader escalation? Actually, my question is, how about if the Iranian or Houthis interpret this build-up as a kind of different meaning and probably preparation for real war? And what would be the effect after that?
Well, I think they should interpret this as a very substantial military build-up. And in hopes that they will be dissuaded from doing what the Houthis have been doing in that case, so restoring deterrence against the Houthis, and then ensuring deterrence against the Iranians. And if they do not act in response to that, then they may see the military might of the United States.
Then the question would be, based on what Trump mentioned before, that if the U.S. Strike on Iran would be in a way that Iranian never seen before. Also, the Israeli media mentioned and warned about a war that most likely probably would be the most devastating war after World War II. And based on this evidence, do you think which kind of attack would be if the two sides get involved in the real war? Would that be a limited, targeted attack like Israel did last year on Iran, or in a broader?
Well, as the commander of U.S. Central Command, who actually developed the plan to destroy the Iran nuclear program, back when, over 15 years ago when I was the commander of U.S. Central Command. All this is publicly known, and it's publicly known that we actually rehearsed that plan one time inside the United States with all the planes flying all the distances that they would have to fly, the refuelers, all the command and control, the jammers that drop the munitions that we would drop and so forth, and it all worked. And we were prepared one time actually to set the theater. In other words, to identify all the locations from which the planes would fly, where they would be based. The munitions were in place, the food, fuel, bed down, water, etc. All was set. We thought there was a likelihood of this. We told the White House we probably should get more prepared than we were. We did. And again, there's nothing limited about an operation that is not just going to take out the Iran nuclear program, but also would have to take out their air and ballistic missile defense system, because you're not going to fly manned aircraft, even though the Israelis very successfully did and did considerable damage to the sophisticated Russian S-300 air defense system that Iran had, which of course Russia can't replace because they're under pressure in their own country from the Ukrainians. But then you probably have to take out some of the retaliatory capacity of Iran as well, because you don't want to just take out the nuclear program and then have them go after the bases where we have forces, and that would then bring in all these other countries, of course, as well. So this would be it's a very substantial operation if it is carried out as it was envisioned back then. Now, obviously, the times have changed. Iran does have more effective, more elaborate air and ballistic missile defenses, although, again, Israel penetrated them twice, showing that that can be done. They have more retaliatory capability in terms of missiles and so forth, even though Israel dramatically reduced the ability of Iran to make solid fuel rocket engines from several per day to 1 or 2 per week. But this is not small. This would be a substantial operation, and that's why the President has ordered preparations that we have seen, and probably other preparations that we will not have seen.
You mentioned about your experience. At the time that you were as a CENTCOM commander, have you ever seen the tension between Iran and United States in this scale? And my question actually is, what would be your advice if you were in charge of CENTCOM right now to President Trump in this regard?
I think the advice would be what I believe the current CENTCOM commander has given, because it has materialized in the form of these particular deployments, the augmentation of forces. I'm sure there's a lot of other preparations that are ongoing. I know the current Central Command commander very well. He served under me in both Iraq and Afghanistan and is a superb senior leader. And again, I'm quite confident that what he has recommended is what we are actually seeing right now. But recognize this situation is quite different from the past. We did have a period where, as I mentioned, we actually thought we might execute the operation to destroy the Iran nuclear program. So it was a very, very tense moment in the Middle East. But Iran was nowhere near as close in terms of enrichment of uranium as it is to weapons grade now. It was quite a bit smaller in number and at a lower level. So this is actually even more challenging in that regard. And President Trump has been very clear, as has, of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu, that they will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
You mentioned about the current operation by Pentagon in the region. As we know, at least 6 B-2 bombers are there, and as we know, these bombers are able to carry the most powerful bomb in the Pentagon called GBU 5728. Can you elaborate and explain more about those 2 bombs? And do you think that the Pentagon and United States will use all those bombs against Iran? And if they do, what would be the scale of devastation on the Iran nuclear infrastructure at the moment?
Well, it's publicly known that the first bomb you mentioned is a 30,000-pound munition that is very accurate, and it can penetrate very hardened targets, and you can imagine which target that might be in particular in this case. The other one is roughly a 5,000-pound munition, and again, that can be very useful, needless to say, as well. But both of these are very, very substantial. The massive ordnance penetrator, which is the first one, the MOP as it's called, is particularly so. It can only be dropped from a couple of types of planes. We're the only country that has those planes. Israel doesn't even have a plane that can carry the MOP, much less have a MOP. So this would be used against the most deeply buried, hardened targets. The other would be used against less deeply buried and hardened targets. And of course, you can put multiple through the same location if that's necessary as well. So these are very substantial. And again, they can do enormous damage and destruction, noting that many of the facilities, of course, are not, they're not right in the center of Tehran or something like that. They're out in more remote areas, though not all.
Do you think that would be possible to using this MOP against Iran nuclear infrastructure?
It's not just possible, it would be necessary.
Let's get to the Israel role. In the event of potential war, what would be the Israel role in the war? Would they be involved in the operation directly with the United States or just a supporting role in this war?
I think it depends, actually. Certainly the U.S. plan is go-it-yourself plan. There are pros, there are pluses, if you will, to having Israel involved in it. There are some minuses as well, perhaps in the region and overflights and other issues like that. So I think it really is not certain that it's going to be done together. If the U.S. decides to go, the U.S. can do it by itself.
What about the broader prospect? How much do you think the U.S. strategy towards Iran at the moment is shaping by Israel pressure? And actually my question is, could this dynamic lead to United States drawn in the war and in the conflict that it might otherwise be avoided?
I don't think so. I think this is first and foremost about Iran being on notice that if they try to develop a nuclear device, that they will be prevented from doing so. That's, above all, most important. Second is that the U.S. patience with the Houthis has long since run out, and President Trump is taking much more aggressive action against them. I wish we had done this much sooner, frankly. I wish we'd done it all the way back when the Emiratis had a chance of seizing the port of Hodeidah, and we did not provide the assistance at that time. Intelligence, targeting, and other capabilities that we could have helped with, in fact, really discouraged them from going after the port of Hodeidah. This would be a very different. In fact, I'd go all the way back to when I was the CENTCOM commander, and we think with a couple of hits with drone strikes that they wouldn't even have advanced to the capital of Yemen, Sana'a. So again, I think this is long overdue. The Houthis are disrupting maritime traffic in a very significant fashion. They're forcing 75–80% of the ships to go around Africa instead of the much shorter route through the Suez Canal. That costs a good bit more. The market has largely priced it in, but it's a significant addition. And of course, the Egyptians are losing 75–80% of the traffic and therefore the revenue that they normally get from ships transiting the Suez. And again, we should have acted much more substantially against them much sooner, but at least it is being done now. Now, an air campaign may not be enough. The Houthis are very resilient. It's a mountainous territory. It's a substantial area. It's not a tiny little location. But as the U.S. is increasing the scope of the strikes and the targets, I think they're going to get a message that they're going to experience very, very significant loss if they continue to interdict ships that are going through the Red Sea.
Iranian top commander IRGC recently, just last week, openly threatened the U.S. Army in the region, more than 50,000 force in the region sitting in the glass room. Given your deep understanding of Iran military posture and regional dynamic, do you think how much the United States should take this threat seriously?
Oh, we take it very seriously, and I'm sure that among the deployments that have been taking place are a number of those to thicken, to reinforce the defensive capabilities of the U.S. and of our partners out there as well, to ensure that these are all integrated air and ballistic missile defenses and all the rest of that to defend against what could be substantial Iranian retaliation. Keeping in mind that I would perhaps caution the Iranians that I think they're in a bigger glass house than we would be, and the capabilities to do even more damage to Iran if they retaliated in a way that killed American soldiers or those of our partners would be very, very substantial.
How about Iranian military posture? How do you think they are able to attack to U.S. interests or allies in the region?
Sure, there's no question that some of the proxies that Iran has supported over the years, over many years, that are located in different places in the Middle East, but those proxies have been very substantially diminished. Its most important proxy of all, of course, is Lebanese Hezbollah. And it had to agree to a ceasefire conditions that it never would have even thought of or contemplated prior to the enormous success by Israeli forces against Hezbollah. Again, that campaign has been strategically very, very significant. And then you add to that the toppling of the murderous Bashar al-Assad regime, and again, that has transformed that portion of the geography north and northeast and east of Israel. And then Hamas obviously has been seriously degraded. Now, they have not yet destroyed Hamas. They actually haven't achieved the three major objectives that Prime Minister Netanyahu set out: destroy Hamas, prevent them from governing again, and recover all the hostages. So they're pursuing more operations in Gaza now. I have actually suggested to them that not only should those three objectives be in place, there also should be a fourth one, which would seek to provide a better future for the Palestinian people in Gaza without Hamas in their lives.
To them, you mean to Israeli?
Israelis, yeah. I mean, well, there's lots of exchange. You know, we had, when I was obviously commander out there and the CIA director, and even as a private citizen, there's a lot of back and forth with various Israeli intelligence, Shin Bet, Shabak, military intelligence, and that has continued. And I was in Israel after 10/11, after 10/7, and discussed the campaign that would have to happen if they were actually to truly achieve the three objectives, plus the fourth one that I have suggested, again, a better future for the Palestinian people in Gaza without Hamas in their lives. And so far, they haven't really adjusted to that. They've been doing what we would call clear and leave operations. In other words, go into Gaza, kill a number of bad guys, damage their infrastructure. Inevitably, there's further damage as well. Because they're often underground. You have to have very substantial munitions to get down that far. But then they leave. And when you leave a vacuum. And Hamas is able to recruit additional fighters to fill that vacuum. Now, they're no longer militarily effective in terms of conventional forces. They're not militarily effective companies, battalions, brigades, but they're quite formidable guerrillas and insurgents. And what is needed really at this point is a comprehensive civil military counterinsurgency campaign instead of the clear and leave operations that they've been employing. There are a lot of challenges to this for Israel, and I fully understand them, and I understand the reluctance to pursue this course of action. They don't have the large forces that are needed for this. It's very manpower intensive. They don't have a counterinsurgency field manual. They haven't trained on this kind of, it took us years to do a counterinsurgency field manual. It was when I was a 3-star in my one non-combat command out of 6 commands as a general officer. And they've never done it before. But they're terrific soldiers, very highly intelligent, very adaptable, innovative, very good technology. And I'm very confident that if they started in the north, it came a kilometer in, put an east-west wall. This is what we did during the surge. We had gated communities, we called it. Fallujah, we put a wall all the way around the city. Then we went neighborhood by neighborhood, and we would wall them off. Once we had them secure, you have to go every building, room, floor, cellar, everything. But once you have cleared it, you generally have security. And once you have security, then NGOs can come in with humanitarian assistance in an organized fashion without Hamas organizing it, which is what this has been doing. You can have contractors come in and maintain the security inside the gated community, but you'll have to have entry control points that will have to be manned by the Israelis. And they should issue biometric ID cards to the citizens who are allowed to be in those areas. They should get them back in the area of their homes, many of which, if not most, are damaged, provide better shelter for them. So humanitarian assistance, then begin restoring basic services, then reconstruction of houses, schools, clinics, markets, roads, bridges, et cetera. And then you can start transitioning security to trained and equipped and vetted, carefully vetted Palestinian security forces that really should have been training since the beginning at the Jordanian International Police Training Center, where we trained well over 100,000 Iraqi police and thousands of their special operations forces as well. Now, this is a very challenging endeavor. It's very time-consuming, but if you want to have an enduring achievement, one that is durable, and then you just keep doing it all the way down from north to south. You just keep on going. And of course, it's very complicated. Gaza City's 1 million people, 4 times or 3 times the size of Fallujah, and all of this is far more difficult than all of the urban areas in Iraq put together that we cleared and held and rebuilt, because of the subterranean architecture, the 350 miles of tunnels and all the rest that's underground. But it's the only option I see that could truly provide a real opportunity for the Palestinians to have a better life without Hamas in their lives. And they're already demonstrating against Hamas, which is very heartening to see, finally recognizing, acknowledging that they had a pretty decent existence before 10/7, and Hamas has resulted, their action resulted in the destruction and terrible loss of life because, again, of Hamas. And if they want to have a better future, they've got to reject Hamas, get more moderate figures in there, and then you actually have a chance that Palestinians in Gaza might live peacefully alongside their Jewish neighbors in Israel.
I'm going to get back again to Iranian
Sure.
retaliation attack. Beyond the military target, Iran has a history of targeting strategic assets like oil infrastructure,
Sure.
commercial shipping, and U.S. allies' territory.
Yep.
How does the U.S. is prepared to supporting all those partner and interests in the region?
Sure,
against Iran?
I can assure you that in partnership with our intelligence community, the forces of U.S. Central Command, the commander and his headquarters, they have identified all the options that Iran could pursue, which could include mining the Strait of Hormuz. It could include taking ships that are just transiting the Suez, or the ships that are transiting the Gulf with crude oil, natural gas, distillates, what have you. They could go after, again, U.S. bases or in even partner bases. So there are lots of retaliatory actions that the Iranians might take, and I assure you that U.S. Central Command has thought through them and also figured out how to mitigate the possibilities to reduce the risk that they could actually be implemented by the Iranians. But that means that expands the scope of this conflict. So as I said earlier, this is not just a surgical attack on discrete nuclear capabilities. This is against the retaliatory capabilities, against the defense capability. And that's what has to be done if you're going to carry out this operation.
Based on some reports, U.S. is using Diego Garcia base due to regional countries' reluctance to hosting any strike on Iran from their soil. Does it mean that in the terms of real war between U.S. and Iran, all those countries remain in the sideline, or no?
I don't think so, actually. I can understand. And we used to work through this as well and be very clear about which bases we could use, which bases we might not use, but we'd still have forces there. So again, there's thousands and thousands of forces sort of all the way up and down the west side of the Gulf. They'll still be there. Whether they participate, and it depends how they might participate. I mean, they might do refueling there, command and control there, other air operations center, or what have you. But the plans have been made that we can do all of this remotely if necessary. That doesn't mean that those U.S. forces won't be vulnerable or in harm's way. And I'm very confident that Central Command has thought through that and has deployed additional defenses of many different types.
And last question. If neither military action nor diplomacy succeed, what would be the U.S. contingency plan to prevent Iran to development in the nuclear weapon?
Well, as we started right at the beginning, the plan would require military action. And it is the plan that Central Command developed again when I was the commander, and has evolved, I'm sure, many times since then, been refined periodically to destroy that nuclear program, to take down the air and ballistic missile defenses, and to dramatically reduce Iran's capability to carry out retaliatory actions.
Thank you so much, General Petraeus, for being with us today.
Great to be with you. Thank you.